All right. Well, we're in Jimmy Kimmel's Theater. I'm up on stage. I was there last night, but now I'm back again in the morning time. Brian Regan is with us. Jackie Flynn is with us. Brian, of course, say a household name when it comes to stand-up comedy. Jackie, maybe you haven't heard of, but he's a stand-up. He's an actor as well. Loudermilk is the name of the show they're both in. It's an excellent show. It's streaming on Netflix. It's a Peter Farrelly production or dream or manifestation, and it's very good. You guys are very good in it, so thanks for joining me today.
Glad you like it. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I know, Brian, you were gracious enough to take your tour bus from Utah to Vegas just to be here this morning.
Yeah, well, it was a huge honor to have you want us to be on the show with you, and I'm performing up in Ivans at Tuacahn Amphitheater, taking the tour bus back and forth each night.
And for you, is it mostly on the bus when you're touring?
A typical weekend for me is 4 one-nighters.
Mm-hmm.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If I'm on the East Coast, I will fly to the first city or near there, get on the bus, take the bus from show to show to show to show, and then fly back from the last one. If it's West Coast, if I can, I'd like to start on the bus, maybe some California shows or something like that. Take the bus out, just do the shows. If I can avoid an airport, I will do so. I will do everything I can to avoid an airport.
All right, so just a process question, and it's personal because I think about this all the time. I have these cities I go back to, and I think, what did I do last time I was in this city? And then I realize I don't have a process for it. I don't write it down. I don't remember. I have a vague recollection of some stuff I did. I mostly have stuff where I go, well, this is less than a year old, and I was here a year ago, so I guess it's safe to do this material. And every time I hear comedians talk, there's a process. Some have a computer, some have note cards, some have a calendar, some release specials, like you release specials, and you go, well, I can't do anything from the last special. But when you go back to that town, how do you know what you did last time you were at that town? And is it that big a deal to you? And then what's your head on it? Like some people go, yeah, so the audience hears a great joke for a second time a year later and they were drunk the first time and can't remember.
I try to turn the material over as fast as I can. I like to use a 1 hour special as a line in the sand. Once it's recorded, I do my best to move away from that material. But you can't do it on a dime. You know what I mean? It's like I can't do that hour's over and now replace it with a new hour. So it's new joke in, old joke out. If I go back to a city, it's usually 2 years later, year and a half later. I'm hoping by that time an audience will be seeing 2/3 new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they see 2/3 of stuff they haven't seen, they're going to be okay seeing a third of stuff that they may have seen last time.
I think they like to see it sometimes. You know, they like to. I used to go watch comics when I was starting out. We'd see the same guys, and you look forward to seeing the little nuances and whatnot. And I figure no one can even remember half the time anyway.
I remember I was doing a radio show for Erie, Pennsylvania, and the host said, so what do you think about Erie? And I said, well, I've never been to Erie. You know, this is one of the fun things about doing this is going to places I've never been to. And I'm really looking forward to coming to Erie and performing for all the wonderful people in Erie. And then when the interview was over, I was like, I think I've been there. And I checked back in my calendar and I had been there like the year before. And I just wondered what all the listeners thought, you know, like, wow,
Really
we must
gives
be
a
chopped liver. The guy doesn't even know that he was in our town.
So, Brian, of course, you've been at it for many, many years. I mean, maybe coming up on 40 years in stand-up.
Yeah, maybe.
I was looking over your resume and saw that you did The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and there's a real demarcation now because first it's, have you done The Tonight Show? Did you do The Tonight Show with Carson? Did you do The Tonight Show with Leno? And the ones who got in with Carson got under the wire. Like, I mean, it's you're in some elite circle of stand-ups who did it while Carson was at the desk. And then I was thinking 91 must have been right at the end for Carson.
It was about a year before he retired. It was actually about a month or two before he announced that he was going to retire in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get in under the wire. At that time, like now, every comedian has different goals and dreams, but at the time, every comedian wanted to do the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Every comedian had the same exact goal. And I had auditioned a couple of times for it and didn't get it. And the last time I auditioned for it, I didn't do as well as the previous audition. And my manager called me the next day and said, they want to bring you into the office and talk to Macaulay was the guy who booked it. And it was a thrill.
You say you didn't do as well, and you guys know, being comedians, you walk off stage sometimes and you go, it wasn't a great night. And then somebody says, hey man, they were laughing. Like, I thought it was pretty good. They got a good reaction. And then you go, it didn't feel right. It's very subjective. It's kind of hard to tell. Like, somebody thought you did better than you did last time.
True.
And could you really just tell by the sort of volume of laughter, or did you just didn't feel right? Like, there are times when, let's just say, you drank a little bit or you're altered a little bit, and then you talk to somebody on the phone, and then the next day you go, oh, they could tell. They could tell, but they couldn't tell.
Right.
You could
The more
tell.
you had,
You
so
knew
it's
your
all-
your buzz, but you held it together pretty well.
Yeah, it's funny. The feeling in your head when you're performing is sometimes way different than what the audience is thinking. My girlfriend, when I get off stage, she says, I can never tell if you had how you felt about the show.
Right.
Because I'll walk off stage and go, I hated it. And
Yeah.
she's like, I thought you had a
Did
great
fine,
set. And I'm like, well, I had to work them. They were biting, but I had to fight it, to get what I could out of them.
I have that with my girlfriend in the bedroom, but it's the opposite. I go, I thought we had a great night, babe. I hated it. Come on. You were laughing the whole time.
It's like the old joke with the comic, when they ask the comic, someone comes up to the comic after a show, I loved your show. And the comic says, what show did you see?
Yeah.
It's like
The first
Right.
one or the second one.
Oh, yeah,
The
that's
second show,
always,
yeah.
it's
The
it's
first,
such
second,
a,
Well,
it's so cliche, but it's so true.
the Tonight Show thing, when I auditioned, I told you I didn't feel like it went great. And the guy who booked the comedians, his name was Macaulay. I think it was Jim Macaulay.
And when you audition, so people know, you're at a club, right?
Comedy club.
You're not in the guy's living room.
Well, I'll tell
Uh-oh.
you, the audition is in a comedy club. So I did the audition at the Improv in Los Angeles. And then my manager called me and said that Macaulay wants to see me in his office, which was at the NBC studios. So I drive the following day to NBC studios to talk to Macaulay, and he invites me into his big office, sits down, and he said, I enjoyed your set the other night, and my heart is pounding, and I'm like, oh, thank you. He goes, but I can't remember what you did. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know if he's joking or what. And he goes, what was the first joke that you did? So I don't know whether to do the joke or paraphrase it. So I kind of like do half of the joke. And he goes, oh, yeah. And then what was the joke after that? So I do the joke after that. And now I'm doing it as the joke. No laugh, nothing out of him. And then I'm telling you, I'm dying. He goes, and what was the one after that? And I do that. And I'm thinking, I'm losing the Tonight Show over this guy's desk.
Right.
He goes, and the next one, I do every bit that was in the 5-minute audition. And he goes, yeah, I think I could put you on based on that set. And I'm like, God almighty.
Wow.
Like if you could have given me some indication along the way with a little chuckle or something.
Yeah.
So that's how I got it.
And do you remember that first night? Do you remember who was on, like, the first time I did Letterman, not as a stand-up, but panel? I remember James Brown was on.
Wow.
And, I'm from North Hollywood, and I've worked swinging a hammer my whole life. I'm going up there. And the one thing I couldn't get over is that James Brown was coming on after me, because the musical act would always go last, but it still didn't sit well with me that I would go out. And then when I was done, James Brown, if, time permitting.
James
Brown would come out.
If we can get to James Brown.
Yeah, if we got enough. Or maybe we can cut his set short, just do
He'll be fine
half
with
of I Feel Good. And I remember just like mind blown that this guy was going to be on with me on Letterman, which of course, when I was 19, I would just sit eating cereal at midnight in my underwear watching Letterman, like in my dad's garage, So I don't know if you remember who was on
I do.
that night.
Well, it was supposed to be Bob Hope.
Wow.
Bob Hope was supposed to be the first guest.
Wow. That would have been extra pressure.
And when I got to the studio, they came up to me in my dressing room and said, Bob Hope is shooting a special for the return of the troops. This is after the first Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
They said he's shooting a special. He should be here on time, but if he's running late, we're just going to put him in as soon as he gets here, and we're just going to see how it goes. So he wasn't there at the start of the taping, so they moved everybody up. I went out and did my set. They had a singer sing 2 songs instead of 1. I went out, did my set, which in itself is, your whole life is around the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I had spent 10 years working on that 5-minute set. I come back through the curtain. I'm in another world. Like, did that go well? Did it not go well? You know what I mean? Like, your brain is just firing.
It's like you have so much adrenaline. It's like in combat when someone gets shot and they don't know it. And they come back and someone goes, "You're bleeding." And they're like, "What?" Like, there's such an adrenaline dump. You really don't know what happened.
That's exactly right. And I came back through the curtain. I'm in another world. The producer came up to me and said, Bob Hope's still not here. And they said, we might want you to go back out at the end of the show if we still have time to fill. And they said, we don't have time to set anything up. Johnny, if you go back out, Johnny Carson will ask you about being from Miami, and you be ready to go into 5 minutes of clean material.
Jesus.
I'm dead serious. And I'm like, I had 10 years to get my first 5 minutes ready. Now I have 1 minute to get my next 5 minutes ready. So I had to quickly go through my head, like, what am I going to do when I go out there? Sure enough, Bob Hope isn't able to get there. They bring me back out. I sit on the panel with Johnny Carson, which is like surreal. And he goes, you did a nice job. Tell me, you're from Miami, right? And then I went into a joke, and it got a laugh.
God.
He laughed. That was the first time I was able to see him laugh, because when you do the set, he's behind you.
Oh, yeah, Johnny, right.
And then he asked me a question. He said, have you ever had any rough gigs, when you got started? And I didn't really have a story prepped. And I said, well, one time I was performing at a bar in the South, and I showed up, and the owner came up and said, we ain't never had no comedians here today. Or we've never had no comedians here in our club. And I said, so, that night I showed up. He could sense that I had nowhere else to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And he went, I know what you're talking about, because when I first started, I would perform in strip clubs. And then he saved me. He threw me a life preserver that no one outside of show business understands.
Yeah. Right.
Like, he knew I was done, and if he had said, and then what happened, my career would have been over.
Yeah. And then from that point on, I'm sure rocket sled to the moon, because back then that was it. I mean, that was the place to be.
Yeah, it was like being knighted.
Jackie, tell us about the time you didn't do the Tonight Show.
I tried to do the Tonight Show several times. I got so aggravated. I was trying to do it with Leno. I mean, we all tried to do it with Johnny, but I actually had a legitimate chance, and I did it at the Improv.
So you did the audition.
Did great. I mean, I felt like it was great. It was great. And they said, oh, that was great, but, Jay Leno does a joke like similar to that one. He talked about that once. Can you do something different? I go, yeah. And I figured they'd just say, look, could you just plug it in, make that quantum leap that I could do it. I just did it. No, they had to see me at the Ice House later on. 17 people in the crowd with Arsenio Hall goes up and does an hour.
Arsenio, yeah.
Burns toast. I go up there and I do like whatever, and they go, and I change the joke for them, and they go, yeah, that wasn't as good. I go, you think? Yeah, what the fuck? I was like, I was out of my mind, and that kind of sour, you know,
Sorry,
you get aggravated.
I'm laughing as a comedian.
It's a true story, but you know what I'm saying? You build it up too, and you're like, you know, you want it to go well, and then at some point you kind of go like, you know, you just get tired of jumping through all the hoops and all that. But it was actually, everybody has that, you know. I've done other ones, all the Caroline comedy hours and the 2-drink minimums and the stuff like that, which is lesser, you know. As a comic, you're like, shit, you know, I wish I could have gotten, like you said, knighted, you know. But
I had an experience that was semi-similar when I was trying to get into the Groundlings a million years ago, and that was always the most important thing, was to make it into the Groundlings, into the group, not the classes, but to be a Groundling, you know. And then my very last, you go through beginning and intermediate, writer's lab, advanced, and then they decide. You do 2 shows, and they decide. You do the 1 show about halfway into the 6 weeks, and then you do the 2nd show, and then they vote the next day.
oh Jesus,
The first show, I crush it because I'm doing all the characters. I'm doing all the stuff I want to do. The 2nd show comes along, and they go, now we want you to do all the against type stuff, all the stuff you didn't do, all the stuff. If you were loud, we want you to be quiet. If you were this, if you were right, we want you to be left. And I said, all right. We do the 2nd show, I lay an egg because it's just a bunch of crap I don't want to do. And then they vote the following morning, and surprise, surprise,
who knew?
Didn't get in. That's tough because you crush it the first time, and then you gotta. And the thing that's, you know, but it's a truism in life where they do that thing where they go like, well, you were great the first time. It's like you took a test, you aced a test. They accuse you of cheating. You didn't cheat. And then they go, now let's do it again. And you get a 41. And they go, well, that's what we're going with. And it's like, that doesn't seem like a fair system.
No, it's just it's a horrible business.
I had a, Rodney Dangerfield's Young Comedian special. So they were doing auditions for it in New York City.
What year is this?
I don't know. But it was towards the end of the Young Comedian specials.
Well, so the Tonight Show's 91. Is this before?
It might have. It was around that time. I don't know if it was before or after, but I wasn't even on the audition. I was emceeing all the people who were auditioning for Rodney Dangerfield, and the HBO people were sitting in the back at Dangerfield's Comedy Club in New York. I'm just emceeing, and the way they did it there is they didn't drop checks on any of the acts. They made the MC go back up and eat checks, meaning it's a horrible time. Checks are all on the table, everybody's paying, nobody's paying attention, and they want you to do 10, 15 minutes so people don't walk out on the servers. So I do the whole thing, I host everything, and then I got to eat the checks at the end. And then when I was done, I get off stage, and they came up to me and they said, they liked you for the Young Comedian special. I'm like,
the HBO people did.
Yeah, HBO. And I'm like, I wasn't even on the audition. And they said, yeah, but they kind of liked what you were doing. They know you were doing the check spot at the end. They'd like to see you again tomorrow, do an actual spot, just to confirm things. So I go in the next night, Sunday night. There's about 14 people in the audience, and I don't get a single laugh. Like,
Jesus.
No laugh. Walk off stage. Rodney Dangerfield is in the back with the HBO people. Rodney Dangerfield could not have been nicer. He said, hey, it's not up to me. It's up to them, And like, I knew what that meant. And I just said, man, thank you for the opportunity. Walked around the streets in New York for like 2 hours. Like, I just ruined my career, We all have those highs and lows, man.
I remember one time I started in Boston in 1987, and I've been doing, doing pretty well a couple of years in, and I, get my tight 15, 20 minutes in. So I go down to New York and I talk my way into the improv, like the dorm is there, and I say, yeah, I'm from Boston, and he puts me on. Turns out, unbeknownst to me, it's like a prom night type thing. And they got these horrible prom night shows, like 1 a.m, whatever. So I go on, And, I talk fast. I'm from Boston. And then you start, rookie errors. You start doing bad. You start going faster. And that just sabotages every other friggin' subsequent joke. And I go down in flames. And I just walked out of there and I had to go sheepishly buy the guy that I conned into. And I felt like such guy. Just that mookie, kind of, and I get in the cab in the loneliest place in the world, New York, and just literally tears in my eyes going, oh my God, I thought my life was over. And I ran into Jerry Seinfeld, who I had met previously in Boston. He was working there, and we talked, and I told him, I said, I just went down in flames. He goes, hey, you're the only one that knows about it. Don't worry about it. You need that show to know that there's life after this. The sun's going to come up tomorrow, and I'll never forget that feeling of that.
Quit.
Simply Safe. Well, spring, fresh air, fresh starts. Take a fresh look at Simply Safe Home Security. I've used these guys for years. We've all used them here for years. They've been with us for over a decade. Named Best Home Security System of 2024 by U.S. News and World Report. Best Customer Service according to Newsweek as well. Blankets your home with indoor and outdoor cameras, plus sensors for break-ins, fire, flood, and more. 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day. No contracts. 60-day risk-free trial. If you don't love your system, return it for a full refund. Simply Safe gave me and many of my listeners peace of mind. And now you should have it too. Get 20% off your system today when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring at simplysafe.com/Adam. 2 I's in there. simplysafe.com/Adam. Save that 20%. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Drowning in a sea of meal kit options? It's like a bad dating app. Say goodbye to swiping left on lackluster meals and go with Home Chef. Fresh ingredients and chef-designed recipes delivered to your doorstep. Over 30 options a week covering a variety of dietary needs. Oh, let's see. I got rutabaga and carrots and salmon. Oh, wait. No, trout. I went with the fish, and I went the vegetables, and I went healthy, but it was so good. I don't know what it was about the carrots and the rutabaga, and I know that sounds like a weird one, but the seasoning was there, and I just devoured it, and it's good for you, too. Classic kits with pre-portioned ingredients, speedy recipes, ready in less than 30 minutes, oven-ready kits with pre-chopped ingredients and microwave meals in minutes. Save an average of $86 per month on groceries. That's right. Home Chef. Home Chef even has a delicious kid-friendly family menu with 18 new options each week. I use this product. It is great, and it is delicious, and it's healthy. It's Home Chef, right, Dawson?
For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 18 free meals plus free dessert for life. And of course, free shipping on your first box. Go to homechef.com/Adam. That's homechef.com/Adam for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. You heard that right. Homechef.com/Adam. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
I'll get to Seinfeld in a second, but I have this weird relationship with Rodney Dangerfield because I didn't know him at all. Stand-up comedians love him. I wasn't a stand-up until later, but I did meet Rodney on a couple of occasions, and he was a huge douche to me. And so and everyone else swears by him and loves him. So I'll just assume he had a bad day with me. But when I was doing Loveline, the TV show on MTV a million years ago, he was a guest. And I used to make a habit of walking into everyone's dressing room and saying hi to them before the show because I didn't like the idea of them coming out on stage and meeting me for the first time. And I guess there's a difference. Letterman would always stay sort of sequestered in his office. You couldn't see him. You couldn't talk to him. And then Leno would make the rounds, and he'd come around, say, how you doing? Yeah, sure. This would be fun. Thanks for doing this. And then it creates a little bit of an ease.
Yeah, sure.
Because
a little rapport with them.
Yeah, because it's a strange relationship when the first time you meet somebody, literally there's 8 cameras on you and lights and an audience. So I would make it a habit, and I would go around and I would say hi to everybody, and then I would just go say whatever you want. If the show's bad, it'll be because of me. You just talk, no big deal. And then So I walked in, and he was in his bathrobe.
Yeah, always.
You know, and it wasn't even terry cloth. It was like kimono style, you know,
Yeah.
but terry cloth has the chance to stay closed on its own. The silk ones just slide apart. Like you could wrap them with duct tape and they'd still fly open in the middle, you know, they just swoop, you know, and he's just standing there with his balls hanging out. He's on the sofa and he's got his bathrobe on, you know, and I go, well, hello, Mr. Dangerfield. I know he doesn't know who I am. Like I'm hosting this show.
Right.
He's plugging Meet Wally Sparks, the movie,
yeah.
right? And so I go, hello, you know, hi, I just want to say hi, you know, thanks for coming on. You can say whatever you want to say. And he goes, yeah, why are you telling me? You know, and I'm like, I'm just wanted to say hi. Yeah, okay, I met you, you know, and I was like, oh, okay.
Jeez.
Well, thanks for coming on. Okay. And comes out on stage. We do the show. I guess the show goes fine. And then after the show, they do that move where the cameras come in and they have their little cue card and they go, now we get the thing where you go, hey, I'm Rodney Dangerfield. See me tonight on MTV's Loveline. And then they do one more. They go, hey, I'm Rodney Dangerfield. See me tomorrow night on MTV's. And then they do, see me now on MTV's Love. You know, they get the 3 trailer package things. And then so it's like one camera guy comes in. You just sit where you're sitting on the sofa and they bang them out, you know, 30 seconds, you know. And he goes, I got to get a haircut. And they go, we got the camera right here, Mr. Dangerfield. It's just, hi, I'm Rodney Dangerfield. See me tonight on Loveline. And he goes, I got to get a haircut. He goes, well, we just do it right here, right now. We could just do it right now. And he goes, I got an appointment. I was like,
Jesus.
we would have been done.
5
We would
seconds.
have been done. We would have been done by now. And he goes, nah, I got to get a haircut. And he just gets up and leaves. And I was like picturing how stringent his barber must be. Like, Miss Dangerfield, you're 41 seconds late. Yeah, I hit traffic. Sorry. Make an appointment for next month.
I'm busy.
I'm busy. I got other hairs to
I
cut.
only met him. I took a leak next to him at the Improv. That was the only time I met him.
that was
hey,
you.
How you doing? That was it. Yeah.
He had an apartment next to Dangerfield's comedy club in New York, and he would come over in his bathrobe from his apartment.
In his bathrobe.
Yeah, I've heard so many stories.
In his
of
bathrobe.
exactly.
And one time I was at the club hanging out. He comes in his bathrobe, and people are in line for the second show. So they're in line in the bar area. He comes in his bathrobe, sits down at the bar, and everybody's in line. They can see him. They're like, oh my God, it's Rodney Dangerfield. And this one guy goes, hey, Rodney, come here. And Rodney goes, hey, fuck you. Hey, what am I, a fucking dog? Fuck you. And then just turns his back and sips on his drink. And everybody was just like, ouch,
Okay.
that was kind of weird.
In his
I'll tell you.
bathrobe.
I've heard so many different versions of that type of story. Like people told me all the time. You heard the famous one with John Fox and him. It's a long story, but supposedly it's true. He was in his bathrobe and it was like cocaine.
Every story.
Honestly,
Every story is-
well, that's how
Rodney was in the cockpit of a
he
American
knows-
Airlines flight in his bathrobe.
He's sitting there on his hotel room. He's got his feet up on the the coffee table, and there's
Right.
they had some blow or something. They were doing cocaine or something. Someone again hate to besmirch
Allegedly.
the guy's good name.
You don't
Allegedly,
know that.
allegedly.
There's no way to know that.
And all of a sudden, Rodney goes, "Hey, who left this one?" He does the last line. Something. He does it. He goes, "Oh, what the fuck?" And his nose is, eyes tearing up, nose running. He goes, "What the fuck?" He goes, "That wasn't coke. That's Desitin from between my fucking toes." He had snorted because he had his feet up on the coffee table. He had snorted. John Fox told the story. Again, it's apocryphal. But
The bathrobe. All right, I get the bathrobe at home, but when you're coming to the
public
studio,
place,
yeah, we filmed Loveline at Hollywood Center Studios, so that means you have to get dressed, leave your house, and change into your bathrobe backstage, or do you leave in your bathrobe? Now I'm starting to think Now I'm hearing the stories.
I'm telling you,
think
I
he
heard
left his
I heard
apartment in
the
the
young
back.
story so many times. Like that's what made me remember that.
I wonder if he's got a garment bag and the bathrobe is in the garment bag. Like he does everything backwards, you know.
He travels in a three-piece suit.
Yeah, it's all dolled up.
He's got an
All you got,
ascot
let me
and a
slip it to
pocket
something a little
watch.
more comfortable.
Hold on, let me take my spats off and get into my
Yeah,
bathrobe.
he takes all his tuxedo stuff off.
Oh, God. Well, I guess at the end of the day, you want stories. You know what I mean? Like, we're all telling stories. And, my story, in real time, many of these stories, whether they're Rodney Dangerfield bathrobe stories or they're like your buddies and you getting into a bar fight stories, they're pretty douchey in real time. Yeah. But as a few decades go on, they become kind of fun and apocryphal, and they become tales. Now we're all laughing about Rodney Dangerfield in his bathrobe.
It's stuff that you think is going to be the most horrific thing in your life, and then all of a sudden you look back on it and you laugh, and you realize, it's nothing's that important, and you think it is, and you build it up in your head,
Well, I will say this. I started at the comic strip in Fort Lauderdale, and I was a busboy, dishwasher, and they would let me go on at the end of the night. Rodney Dangerfield just popped in one time. He was performing down the street at the Sunrise Musical Theater, like in a couple of nights. Yeah. He comes in
his bathrobe.
He didn't have his bathrobe on, but he comes in, asks if he can do some time, which is like so bizarre. Like, well, we're going to vote on it,
Right.
Like, of course. He goes on stage, small audience, like on a Wednesday night. And he goes, hey, I got some new stuff I'd like to try on you, and the crowd is like thrilled. There's like 50 people there. He takes out these note cards and he puts these glasses on and he reads one by one jokes, half delivering them, half reading them, and one would get a laugh. He's like, yeah, maybe that's a keeper, and then he'd do another one, go, not so hot on that one, and he went through about 10 minutes of cards. And I was in the back, like, I'm young. I'm watching a master do his craft. He leaves. At the end of the set, he goes, thanks for the use of the hall.
Hall.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thanks for the use of the hall. He gets off stage. He leaves. He comes back in the next night, asks if he could do some time. Of course. He goes on stage. No 3x5 cards. No glasses. He's doing the same jokes, not doing the ones that weren't any good. Doing the ones that were pretty good, but now they're tighter and better. Sure. And I remember going, how much did he improve in one day by putting some work into it?
Yeah.
Right.
And I remembered learning, this is a craft, man. And if you work at it, you can
get better.
You can get better, not only get better, but get better fast, Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people, when it comes to stand-up, but when it comes to comedy, when it comes to anything in the arts, they ascribe a lot of sort of mysticism to it. Like, oh, he's naturally funny, or he's just one of these gifted guys or something. And that's all true, but they kind of forget the technical part of it that we understand very clearly in every other discipline of life. Lawyers and doctors and pilots and teachers and everything. It's all repetition and work. I was a carpenter because I did it for 50 hours a week for 10 years. Nobody's naturally gifted at carpentry, some better than others, but you can't learn all the codes and the layout and the names of the different materials and all the tools and what they do. So you work at, but I think with art, sometimes people don't bring that to it, because they sort of chalk it up. I think lay people think it's just some sort of gift. Yeah. Almost like, oh, this person has a great singing voice, but they don't really think about all the steps.
And also good comics make it look easy, and it looks like that.
If you're doing it
you're just up there standing and talking.
Right.
You're not really,
but, as you were going through the machinations of Dangerfield up there with the glasses and the 3x5 cards, I had this thought, which we should all probably do, but I don't think I ever will. But you guys know that it's funny when you want to do new jokes, right? And you get up there and you think, okay, how's this joke going to work? Well, let me test it in front of an audience. And so you go out there and you start trying it out. But before the reaction, you can feel it because you're saying it out loud for the first time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was all in your head and you're writing it down, but you never said it out loud.
Yeah.
And I can tell, forget about the audience reaction.
Right as you're saying it. Yeah.
2/3 into it, I go, oh, this is a shit joke. I'm saying it.
Yeah.
I can
It
hear
doesn't
it.
sound good
And
to
I
you.
used to say to people all the time, like when they'd write a speech or a piece of commercial copy. I'd have to do it on the radio all the time. So it was like copy. And it sounded like shit. I'd go, read it out loud. Hand it to somebody and close your eyes and tell them to read it to you. And then you'll hear it. Like if you're doing a best man speech, hand it to the second best man.
Yeah, and let him read it.
Let him read it, and you'll immediately hear problems
If it rings
with it.
true or
And
not.
I wonder if before you do a new joke or 5 new jokes, if you should physically just stand and say it out loud, like alone.
I think what you're saying is spot on. I think when people are writing, literally writing, like whether a pen or a computer or whatever, people make the mistake, I think, of trying to be too clever and cutesy and putting stuff in there that's not
Natural.
necessary or natural. It's too much. And when you're on stage, I think some of the best writing takes place on stage.
Absolutely. I
Because
was just going to say that.
you edit out all that nonsense and go get to,
Right to the
the
point.
quick,
Yeah.
man. And you take out all the stuff that's not necessary. So I think saying things out loud, doing it in the moment, is where you get it down to what it should be.
And I think you actually, to your point, I tape a lot when I'm on stage, not because I want to listen to myself again, but if I do something different or whatever, I can listen to it. Also, in that moment, you're in the zone and you say something, and it's just so much better and funnier than if you sat there and wrote it. You know, it just you just know, oh, this is going to be so funny if I say this now. You know, if you don't obviously think that
Right.
quickly, and then you're in that different zone. It's a whole different world than sitting there writing.
How did it work with Seinfeld? I know he was a early supporter of yours, Brian, and I think everybody sort of looks to him as the sort of North Star of comedy, the sort of beacon of comedy. I have not had that experience with Seinfeld. Maybe it's me. Maybe Dangerfield, Seinfeld. Maybe it's just me, but I've never had that experience with him. But I think he was a fan of yours early on.
Yeah, I think Seinfeld's great. I think
I do
he's
too.
somebody who, as far as the craft and the gift of comedy, I mean, he puts a lot of
Consummate.
thought. Yeah, he's really, really good at what he does. And I was very fortunate early on. I was performing at Catch a Rising Star in New York. I did a set. I walked off stage. His show wasn't on yet. Seinfeld, the show wasn't on yet, but he was a king in the comedy world.
Yes.
And I walked off stage and he stood up. He was going to go on next. And he said he liked my stuff. And I said, wow, thank you. You know, like huge honor. And then a week later, I go into Catch a Rising Star and he's over at the bar talking to some other comics. You know, those hierarchies, you know,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
that's not my bubble.
can't go in that group.
I don't
Yeah.
belong in that group.
Right.
So I'm standing off to the side, and he called me over. He goes, hey, Brian. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, Jerry Seinfeld's calling me over. And I went, hey, how are you? And he said, good, man. He goes, I liked your set the other night. I said, thank you. He goes, they asked me to host a special on Showtime, Showtime comedy special or something like that. And they asked if there were any comedians I'd like on it. And he said, and the only name I said was you.
Wow.
Jeez, you know, it's hard to, like, I don't know, express like what those moments are to performers and comedians.
Yeah.
But it was like amazing to me. And then he put me on that thing, and he's been a supporter of mine, you know, over the years. And so it means a lot to me.
Well, I'll put this to both of you. I'm the same way in that I come from I'm sort of permanently humbled in the sense that that's where I come from. It's not a socioeconomic thing. It's just my family was just downtrodden. You know what I mean? Nobody laughed. Nobody said, oh, you're awesome, or you're going to be president one day or something. It's a kind of default setting of, it's little settings like whenever somebody says, like sometimes I'll talk to Jimmy Kimmel and he'll go, I was at a party and I was talking to so-and-so and he's a big fan. And I'll go, why would he? Why does he know who I am?
Right.
And I go, well, he knows who you are. And I go, why? You know what I mean?
You never can accept it.
It's mostly confusing. I mean, I'm happy for it, but it's like, oh, why would that person know?
Yeah.
I've heard of that person. Why would that person?
Right.
Like,
It
it's a
doesn't go the
weird,
other way.
it's a default setting. And it's not beat yourself up. Oh, you're so bad, low self-esteem. It's just a kind of a simmering kind of baseline of who cares. So when those moments happen with Seinfeld or what have you, you're always it's not so much elation, it's a more confusion.
And surprise.
Why were you guys talking about me over there?
It doesn't add up.
Right, because
It just
you're
doesn't compute.
Yeah.
you're permanently sort of, in
Your
the
own
ninth
worst critic,
grade, and
you know?
none of the girls like you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's where you're set. And I don't know if you guys have that setting. I don't know where you come from. If somebody gave you that setting, I don't know if the environment was supportive. It's not a bad thing, really. It sort of makes you work.
Humble. You got to be humble, and it's humility. You know,
I think that's one of the reasons why we gravitate towards stand-up is to get that acceptance that maybe you didn't feel like you got in your regular world. When you're in front of a room full of people and they're laughing, that means you're being accepted. And so it's
But how much of it is pragmatic? Like, so here's the caveat, or not the caveat, but here's the deal. You have to work. I mean, we're all of a certain age. We all come from a place where it's like not working is not an option, right? The family, no money.
Yeah.
You have to work.
mm-hmm.
And then we're also a little old school. We're like, you're the man. If you have kids, if you get married, you have to take care of them. You're going to be the one who has to work. Right. So you go, all right, we've established we're going to be working. And we've established we're going to be working for a long time. From me, it was high school to, today. So then in that case, would you like to maximize your income? Like what would you like to do? What is a job you'd like to do? And, I was talking to a super rich guy in Reno last weekend, and he's very wealthy and he has a huge Porsche car collection and stuff like that. And at some point I go, what business are you in? And he says, I clean medical devices. And I, so now I'm sitting in his BMW 850 and I just got done looking at his multi-million-dollar Porsche collection. So he does it well. I don't know if he does every unit himself with a bottle brush, but somehow he's parlayed this into something, right? So there's a part of me that goes, my God, you're doing well. And then another part of me is, you clean medical devices. Nobody was in high school saying, what do you want to do? I want to play shortstop for the Yankees or clean medical devices, So then you have this other thing where you go, well, you could make a lot of money, but doing what? Cleaning medical devices? I don't really want to do that. Then there's a part that goes, well, you could be a fireman, but that's only good for $45K a year. But you want a sports car, so there's a pragmatic side of comedy where you go, look, I think I can do this and I think I can get paid to do it. And I got to work and it's a job. And I'm just going to choose, forget all the art and forget all the attention and forget all the, you're on stage and people are laughing and they're applauding. There's just a dollars and cents part of it, right?
Well, yeah.
That people don't like to talk about because they like to talk about the art part. But.
No,
but when you first start out, I don't think you're doing it for, you're not thinking about the money in a sense.
No, but you're thinking about the potential of it.
And not working for a living.
Right.
Not working for a living.
When I first started, like when I very first started, it was my fantasy to be able to get to a point where if I could make $100 a night doing comedy, I'd be set. And that was my goal. I mean, I didn't really think above that. I'm like, if I could get on stage and tell some jokes and somebody gave me $100, that would be fantastic. And then when you get into it, then you realize, well, there is a lucrative side to it at certain levels. And That's
Yeah, well, the
driving.
chasm between starting out and being a working stand-up. Like I make my living doing stand-up. You can say with a straight face if someone says, "What do you do for a living?" I do stand-up. The chasm between the open mics and that
Huge.
is a football field.
Sure.
The chasm between working comedian and millionaire is about 10 yards.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's great, but it's still only
it's the
about
last
10 yards.
10 yards, the
It
hardest.
feels like 10 yards. This feels like 100 yards.
I used to get intrigued going into the Improv in Los Angeles, and you have all these comics hanging around,
The bar. Yeah.
and some can't get on stage that night at the club, and they can't get any gigs. And then right next to him is a guy who has a sitcom who's making $1 million
Yeah.
a week. And the disparity in one room of people who are comrades
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
bizarre.
It's always.
That's what it's like living in LA. You drive through a homeless encampment to get to your Malibu
Beverly
mansion.
Hills,
It's
yeah,
like you
yeah.
literally drive through squalor and then you turn left and you go Benedict Canyon and you go to your $32 million home. Like it is
but for the grace of God.
crazy.
Yeah.
O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. They're in the business of keeping your car on the road. They offer friendly, helpful service and the parts, knowledge, and everything else you need to maintain and repair your vehicle. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in store or online. You never have to worry if you're in a jam. They got your part. The team at O'Reilly Auto Parts can test your battery for free in or out of your car. It's nice not to have to yank that thing. If it needs to be replaced, they'll help you find the right battery for your vehicle. Need your windshield wipers replaced, brake light fixed, or quick service? They'll help you find the right parts or point you in the nearest local repair shop so you can have the pros do it. Whether you're a car aficionado or an auto novice, you'll find the employees at O'Reilly Auto Parts are knowledgeable, helpful, and all friendly. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself. And you can find out what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today, or you can give them a visit. O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam.
So sorry, Loudermilk. I should discuss this because it's a really funny series and it's on Netflix, and I feel like I don't know. I don't know how you both got cast in it. I don't know if they came to you. I don't know if you read for it. I don't know what the process was, but it's very good. It's very organic. And it's very funny. And I think
Thank you.
everyone I know who
Thanks,
sees
yeah.
it goes, you know, a series is good when somebody starts talking about or anything. It could be granola. You know, if somebody's like, "Hey, have you tried the Nature Valley?" and another guy in the room goes, "Oh yeah, that stuff's great." Like that's
It's
how
like
you
a
know.
certain little buzz
That's
about
how
it,
you know it's great.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what was that process like?
Well, Peter Farrelly, I've done a bunch of Farrelly Brothers movies over the years. Started with Kingpin and something about Mary, all those movies. And Pete said, "Oh, I got something I'm working on that you'd be good for, one of the guys in the thing." I didn't know what it was. It was a show called Loudermilk. I had no idea. But then when I read it, and then he was going to end up doing it, I happened to be at the National Comedy Center, and Brian was performing there. It's in Lucille Ball Comedy Festival. It's in Jamestown,
New York.
Wow.
And
I don't know why I'm
and
telling
Pete
you
was
stories.
there. Pete was there. He brought they had him bring the Mutt Cuts van from Dumb and Dumber. The
Right.
van they drove, and they had that there. And then I took Pete to see Kevin. I took Pete to see Brian.
My name is Brian.
With I was thinking of. So then we went, and there's a big rink. I think a hockey rink you were performing. I knew he'd like him, and then we go backstage, and Pete says, he might be good for Loudermilk, and then he talked to him about it, and then he came out and ended up. He actually was going to look at you for the lead at one point, I think, before they had Ron Livingston.
Yeah, he considered me for the lead. It was amazing. He came up after my show, said that he liked my show, and said he was working on this thing, Loudermilk, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in it. And I I don't like getting in over my head. And I said, I got to be honest with you. I don't know if I know how to act. I said, I don't know if I can act. And he goes, I know you can act. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, I just saw your set. He goes, you do these vignettes and you do these little pieces. It's acting. He goes, so I know you can act. He goes, you just need a director who can get what you do on stage out of you on a set. So I was like, okay. So he had me come in and read for the Loudermilk role, the lead, and I was nervous as hell. And they put me on tape, and I don't think I rose to the occasion. He called me that night at the airport. I was flying home, and I was like bummed out. It was sort of like the young comedians thing, you know, like, oh boy, I didn't get it done. Yeah. He called me. He goes, listen, it's probably not going to work out for the lead, but he goes, I like what you're doing, and I think you're good. I've got another role. He goes, you don't even need to audition for it. He goes, you can, and it's Muggsy. That's my character. Mm-hmm. He goes, if you want it, it's yours. Mm-hmm. So he just gave it to me. And then when I first got to the set, you know, like I was nervous and all that sort of thing. But I finally, one day, I was about 2 weeks into shooting, and I shot a scene. I was really uncomfortable whether I had the acting jets or not. He says, cut. He takes me aside and he goes, listen, he goes, I don't want you worrying about the words on the paper. He goes, the words on the paper are just to let you know the information that needs to get across. You say it however you want to say it. So I said, okay. And he goes, and feel free to be funny, whatever you feel is natural. So the very next take, I ad-libbed, and it got a laugh on the set. He laughed. And then from that moment on, I felt like I had carte blanche to take the words and play with them and do what I wanted to do with them.
That's how a lot of it happens while we're shooting. Someone will say, it'll be funny if Muggsy says this instead of that, or you know how it works. And then everyone agrees, and then we shoot it. You try to shoot it the normal way, and then we end up improvising a little bit.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's hard. It's always, I've always found it best when the director says, just here's the idea, express the idea. Don't get caught up in the actual verbiage, because as comedians, you're not used to memorizing things verbatim the way other people wrote them. You can memorize the way you've written it, and you haven't even physically written it. You've just done it so many times that you have an order and a cadence to it. But you then get tripped up on the memorization part, and then you immediately stop acting or emoting or whatever it is you're trying to do, because you're always up in your head.
What's the next
word?
What's
the thing? And you always trip and stumble on that. And the best performance they'll get out of you is just to go, just flow with it.
One of the first season, they shoot a 10-episode season all together like a movie, and they shoot it all out of order, but and then they put it together in the proper order. So they don't do it one episode, then next episode. They shoot all 10 at the same time. And they call the 10 episodes. So all 10 episodes are written, and they call it the Bible. I didn't know that. So one of the first days I'm on the set, I asked Pete Farrelly, I said, in this scene, I don't know if my character believes what he's saying or not. And he said, have you read the Bible? And I went, well, not in a while, you know, like, is this really going to help me if I consult the Bible? He goes, well, if you read the Bible, you'll know better what.
I didn't hear that.
You'll know better how to handle this. And for like an hour, I'm like, oh my God, he's like really religious, and I got to go get my hands on a Bible and find out what he's talking about. I found out later it meant the actual.
It's very funny. I didn't know that.
So Brian, you played some ball in college, right? And football. I played football as well, and I got a lot of lessons from it. I don't need to tell everyone. They've heard it enough, but the discipline and the sort of hard work and the getting yelled at by people and correcting and all that stuff. But I think you played at a D2 college. Is that correct?
Division D3.
And did you have a coach sort of try to steer you toward the theater?
I thought I was going to be an accountant. I went to college thinking I would be an accountant, so that was my major. Halfway through the first semester, I didn't know. I didn't like it. I didn't like accounting. I like football. I went and talked to my head football coach, and I said,
"What position were you playing?"
I was a wide receiver.
So you must have been fast.
I was okay. I was more under the coverage guy. You
Mhm.
know, I couldn't really get behind anybody. I would just find a little hole and turn around and catch the ball. So I talked to my head coach and I said, listen, I love playing football, but I'm a little off track in terms of education. And he said, you're a funny guy. I've seen you make all your teammates laugh. You might consider the communication and theater arts department.
Wow.
It was
Evolved.
180 degrees from anything I'd
Yeah.
ever done in my life, you know.
Never even considered it.
No.
You were just cracking up your teammates the way people do.
Just being funny. With,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I give that coach a lot of credit for
Seeing that.
seeing that and putting me in the right direction. And it changed my life.
That's a Dick Vermeil type decision and not a Bill Belichick type decision. I feel
More feel.
Yeah, I feel like Dick would start crying and explain you should be in Man of La Mancha, whereas Bill Belichick would have yelled at you to get back on the field.
Yeah, right.
So that's interesting because I always talk to people, and Jack, I'll ask you, many people like Jay Leno and others, but like Jay will tell you the story that way back in the day, the teacher said to him, look, it's clear, the book reports and the oral reports, it's not right. Why don't you find a subject that you want to talk about and then don't read it off the paper, memorize it, essentially do a stand-up routine. Yeah. And he's like, Mrs. Jenkins plucked me out. Like it made a difference. It made a difference. I sadly do not have any of those stories or anything that resembles those stories. So it took me a while to find my way. But I'm always interested in those people, those weird little crossroads of life, brief interactions. None of the interactions lasted more than 4 minutes. It's not like you went to a retreat with these guys and over the course of a weekend.
You decided what you were going to do.
No, he just called you and he said a few words and you left. And he didn't think much of it. You may not have thought much of it, but looking back on it, it was really pivotal in your life. And I don't know, Jack, if you had any of those people.
I've just had, I took a speech class in high school, and Mr. Roberts, I remember, and it was just, you memorize different stuff and even Shakespeare monologue, whatever it was. And it just kind of gave you the feeling of, wow, you kind of felt like what it felt like, and then years later, I was always doing, making my friends laugh, obviously, and all that stuff. But when I went to school at the University of Miami in Florida, my buddies were like, you should do the talent show. It was sponsored by Catch a Rising Star and Bud Miller Lite. And it wasn't a comedy show, it was a talent show. They had some guy with a ventriloquist guy. They had a piano player and another person playing the violin. And I did some stand-up. A gig I wouldn't relish today as a 37-year professional. 400 drunken college kids at the Miami Rathskeller. And so I did that, and you got the feeling of, oh my God, like I did a little bit. I didn't do great, but I had a couple jokes. I did some Rodney impressions and stuff. And then one time my dad was a member of this club, and his buddy literally threw me to the wolves. He goes, hey, Jackie does some stuff. Why don't you have him go? And I went up and I had to do my Rodney. That's all I could do is Rodney. And I did it, but I got
Wait, where is your Rodney? Because we heard
I'll tell you.
Rodney.
I woke up this morning, I put on my shirt, my button fell off. I picked up my briefcase, the handle fell off. I'll tell you, I'm afraid to take a leak. But I used to, 100 years ago. But anyway, I did it, and I got the feeling of, and then I didn't do it for a long time. It's weird. You'd think that wanting to be a comedian at some point, I would have, dove into comedy clubs and whatnot. And it always kind of struck me as odd that I didn't. And I think looking back on it, it was almost a negative experience when I did go to comedy clubs, because it was like you see a guy so polished and you go, man, I'm funny, but how do you do that? It was almost like almost like a downer, and I think maybe that's why I didn't always just go to comedy clubs. You'd think I would.
I agree.
You know what I mean? It was it kind of dissuaded me a little bit from
there
it.
There may be a lesson here, and I haven't talked about this in a long time, but everyone always talks about inspiration, and they go, oh, I heard the words of Maya Angelou, I was inspired, and all that. But for me, I felt the same way. I was, flailing and not doing much, and I'd turn on the TV and I'd see a Dennis Miller special.
Yeah. And,
it was like rat-a-tat-tat. Where's the thesaurus? I don't get that reference. Boom, boom, boom.
Nobody did.
And I sat there and I went, oh, I could never do that. Never.
Yeah, it would never discourage you.
But then I would get into my pickup truck at 6:30 in the morning and I'd drive to the construction site and I'd turn on the morning radio and I'd hear the two numbnuts that were on the local FM station. I'd go, well, shit, I can do that.
Yeah,
you know what
piece
I mean?
of cake.
And so I was inspired by the fuck ups, you know,
That's great.
and not
That's
the
great.
greatness.
That's
Who the
great.
fuck wants to watch Michael Jordan take off from the free
I can
throw
never do
line?
that.
I
do
can't
that.
touch the backboard
That's very
with a
funny.
step stool. What?
Yeah.
No, I want to see the people. I
Yeah,
can't,
yeah.
and we never really discuss it in society, but I was like, I literally would listen to morning radio, and I would hear them interview a stripper or celebrity or something, and I would come up with the punchline before they would.
Or a better version of it.
A better version of it,
Yeah.
and I would go, "Oh, I think I'm better than these guys."
great.
Now, I'll never get in that radio studio. I'll never do it, but I could do it. I could do it.
Yeah.
Because I never looked at Dennis Miller and went, "Oh, come on, I'm
can
better
do-
than
yeah.
that. I could
No.
do better than that."
You know, to go back real quick to the Seinfeld thing, remember I told you I met Seinfeld prior to that time where I went down in flames in New York. I watched him. He did 45 minutes, and I was a fledgling comic at the time, doing it a couple of years. And I said, "Look," I said, I watch you, and I go, I think I'm pretty funny, but how do you do that?" And he told me at the time he was doing it 12 years. I remember thinking that's a long time. And he said, "You're looking at 12 years of gleaning everything I could after 12 years, boiled down to 45 minutes of just meticulously working on it." And I went, "Oh, okay." You know what I mean? So that's what you're looking at. You're looking at absolute perfection at that point, and you don't realize, like you said, when you see Dennis Miller, it's like, holy shit, how the hell do you get there?
Well, we were talking earlier about, when people don't realize the work that goes into it. When you say that he gets all this down to a tight 45 minutes, it amazes me to do a set, like you go to do an hour and you'll walk off stage, and sometimes people will ask you, did you just think of that
Yeah.
That's the trick.
while you were up there? And it's a huge compliment, but it's also like, how in the world do you think somebody
could actually possibly
could
all that all in their
could
head.
do
Yeah.
that? It's like that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's every word is thought about,
Yeah.
and
Every joke reminds you of the next joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Anyway.
used to, when I started out in radio, I started doing this character named Mr. Burcham, who was a woodshop teacher. And I had all my construction experience behind me, so I picked a character where I sort of knew the topicality, and I would get up there and I would go, the nailing schedule on shear wall is 8 in the field and 12 on the seams, and use 10-penny ring shank nails. Don't use 8-penny sinkers. If they're not going to sign off on that. And use CDX struck 1 half-inch ply, good one side. Put the label out, and make sure you top plate, double plate, joist hangers, purlins. I would just keep going. Get your D handle, half-inch whole hog with a half-inch chuck, and use a Forstner bit
My
and
head's
drill,
spinning.
and then pull your Romex through it. And once you do that, then get your propane-powered slab grinder and go ahead and even that slab, and don't leave any dog nuts if you're going to be putting mud on that drywall. And at some point, after all the crazed, specific, whatever, people would always come up to me and they go, "Do you really know about woodworking? Or you just doing a comedy bit?" And I'd go, "How could you fake? Who knows what a Tico clip, an A35, and a joist hanger is? Like, who would know the difference between 16-penny nails and 8-penny nails and ring shank nails and duplex
Get all
nails?"
and put it into the right context.
Yeah, but I would freeform all this stuff, and I'd go, "Look, let's pretend I had to pass myself off as a computer expert. I wouldn't last 15 seconds without you sussing me out, because I have no fucking idea. I
terminology.
can't fake it."
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we let me check the time here. We got a couple more minutes. Brian, you're
I want to ask you a
coach, yeah.
question. Can I ask you a
Yeah,
question?
all you want.
You were in a movie where you played a boxer, yes? I
Yes.
thought it was really good. And when I
Oh,
saw
thanks.
it, I was surprised that you don't do more acting. Are you interested in doing more acting? I thought you were real and good, and I thought the movie was good.
Oh, thanks. Movies called The Hammer. Some people see it. They kind of come out of the woodwork every once in a while. They go, hey, I really enjoyed that thing. That was just a movie I had an idea for. It was a real small independent film. I I just started doing mornings, taking over for Howard Stern on the West Coast. I was about 6 months in, and I was like, oh, I want to make this movie. And everyone said, how can you make a movie? You know, you got to work mornings 5 days a week. And I would just say to everyone, there's never a good time to make an independent film. There's never, you don't get paid. There's no opening in your calendar, you know. And I just said, we just have to go for it. It was a nice film, well received. People like it. And no, nothing ever came out of it. I should talk about this to a therapist, but I just do my own thing sort of over here, separate from Hollywood. And there was a time when I sort of thought, oh, someone's going to see this and the phone's going to ring, you know, but it never happened. And I don't know if it's, you know, my personal posture, like where I'm just going, leave me alone, I'm doing my own thing over here, or I'm being paid back for some transgression in some other life. I don't know exactly what it is, but nobody offers me acting roles. The phone never rings. I feel like I could do it, but I don't have the opportunity to do it. And every single thing I've done pretty much has been generated by myself. The Man Show, we created the Man Show. The Crank Yankers, we created Crank Yankers. The Hammer, the movie, I created. Now coming out with Mr. Burcham, animated series, I created.
That's
and
great.
I just
Do your own thing.
I just had this mindset where it's like, look, if you're going to work, you're going to create the work. And you are a train and you're moving fast, and you got to throw the track out in front of the train. If you don't throw the track out, the train's going to derail. And if you're sitting and waiting for the phone to ring, the phone's never going to ring. And so far, I've been pretty right about it.
You know, I completely relate to that. Loudermilk is the only thing I've really acted in, other than Chris Rock was kind enough to put me in his movie Top 5. I had a little scene in that. I thought I did a nice job. Everybody who saw it said, wow, you were funny in that. I thought the phone would ring after the Chris Rock movie. Nothing. After Loudermilk, 3 seasons, feel like I did some good stuff. Nothing.
Well,
Hollywood doesn't work.
Nobody saw it though yet, but now people will see it. They'll see.
Well, I don't think Hollywood works the way it's supposed to work.
No, well, you thought Hollywood would be sort of like The Tonight Show. You do a good hit on The Tonight Show, and then opportunities would follow. And what I've sort of realized with Hollywood is there's a group, and it's a group that they use, and they sort of rinse and repeat. You know, same group, you see the same people and the same popping up. And some of them, I get it, George Clooney or whomever, like there's a leading man, but then there's some second and third tier guys where you're sort of like
working so much. Yeah.
It's a network, and it's about networking, and it's not really nepotism or brown nosing or anything. It's just there's a group, and you go to those parties, and you show up,
you're in it.
You go in those circles, and if you're not in those circles, you're not, man. You're sort of out, and, you know, being discovered at Schwab's at the counter is a bygone era. Yeah. And I sort of had the same thing. I thought, well, I'll make this romantic, you know, comedy, and I'll be the lead in this romantic comedy. And
show your acting jets.
Show I can act, and then somebody will see it. Somebody will call my agent or something.
Not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here. And you guys
but I
might not
have
be
to
here
think
either.
that if you really pursued that and you got your agent, you would be able to, you know.
There is, I am too, the word's not bashful, but there is a part of it where you become, you have to have a little P.T. Barnum in you. You know, you have to have a little, I wouldn't take no for an answer. And I didn't get the audition, so I went to Brian Grazer's office,
you don't have
and I banged on the door, you know, and I'd be like, leave him alone. Brian's busy. He doesn't want to talk to me. He doesn't know who I am.
Right.
Why would he know who I am? Like, you have to have a little, I'm coming in through the front door, and and I don't have any of that. And it's definitely helpful if you're in that position. But on the other hand, I think it's worked out all right for all of us, right?
Right.
Seems fine.
Right.
And and you get to do what you want, and you create your own vehicles. So it's like all the acting I've done is in projects that I created, so I get to act. So, let that be a lesson to the kids, right?
I've Peter Farrelly is the first exception to this, but I used to think the only people who have really helped me in terms of career advancement have always been other comedians. Seinfeld helped me get on this, that, and the other. Chris Rock put me on his thing. Letterman liked me. He's a stand-up.
Yeah.
Did well on the Letterman show. It was always comedians. And then Peter Farrelly was kind enough to put me in there. So he's the one exception to the thing. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think in a weird way, it's sort of like luck in that I do not consider myself a lucky person. And then people go, whoa, look at you. You got a beautiful home and kids and cars and what a life, And I go, yeah, but none of that's luck. That's all just me sort of busting my hump. And I don't buy lottery tickets and I don't wait for the phone to ring because that is something a lucky person would be the recipient of. And I don't. But it's like saying, I'm not going to get lucky with one punch in the ring. I better train my ass off so I'm ready for the fight. And I think that applies to us. And ultimately, it's probably a gift. It probably doesn't feel like a gift, but ultimately, big picture, the phone's not going to ring. So you got to make the hay while the sun shines.
Keep plugging.
All right, let me give a plug. Speaking of plugging, Loudermilk. It's streaming on Netflix. It's really funny, and I think you guys have done great work in it.
Thanks.
Even though the phone's not going to ring.
Never. You got to enjoy the journey. You got to enjoy the journey.
One of us.
Jackie and Brian, thank you guys for making the pilgrimage out here, man. That means a lot. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for
Thanks
having us.
for having us.
Thank you.